Rob J gave me an incredibly generous 1 year's worth of subscriptions on Patreon and brings you today's video. Sheoldred versus Solfim with a means of getting down a turn 2 Sheoldred. That's really good, so we will keep. We are on the play, so no draw for us. Get down the Ancient Tomb to take some life immediately into an Arcane Signet. And our opponent just starts off with a mountain, so get our first draw here, which is a Bloodstained Mire. We'll save on the shuffle effect just in case we need it. Play our commander on turn 2, and during the draw step they lose their first 2 points of life. Alright, excellent, and my opponent's disconnected here, so I'm going to assume that that was on purpose, but let's wait around and see if he reconnects and carries on playing. Alright, looks as though my opponent did get a bit salty and scoop it up, so we'll give him the win he so desperately craves and get on with another one. Up against Ixhel this time with a much slower hand. We'll go down a card, see if we can get into something better. Of course not. So going down 2 cards, we've got, alright, Dark Ritual, Vamp Shooter. Dark Ritual into Black Market Connections is probably fine there, so we'll keep, get rid of Damnation and Toxic Deluge. Our opponent doesn't do anything. We draw into Orcish Bowmasters, so we will go for the Dark Ritual into the Black Market Connections here so that we can start ramping and drawing some cards with this. And I might even go for Vamp Tutor into a Jeweled Lotus or something, maybe a Sol Ring. A Sol Ring would obviously make more sense because we can make a treasure with this. Still get our commander out next turn. And then we see a Canker Bloom, so we're only going to get 1 activation on the Black Market Connections. Maybe we can tempt our opponent to blow up a Sol Ring. Should maybe use the Vamp Tutor to go for a Necropotence or something. Yeah, that's probably going to be a better idea actually, now that I'm thinking about it. So we'll grab the Necropotence, draw into that during the draw phase, then this triggers during the main phase. And we'll do all these things. Go down to 32 already, gets us into another land. So we can hold up the Orcish Bowmasters, and we're likely just refilling our hand with Necropotence next turn. If our opponent doesn't want to crack this, then so be it, we'll just go for our commander on our next turn. Forcing him to get rid of the Black Market Connections though. So we'll hold on to that treasure to get our commander into play. And then it's a Grateful Apparition so that our opponent can proliferate more poison counters onto us. Tempting to go for the Bowmasters in order to blow that up, but we'll risk it getting more plus counters on it. Alright, a Villis. I'm glad I went for the Necropotence now, although we'd have a Sol Ring in play, so playing Cracked Verdant Catacombs into our commander should be fine. Do we want to get down the Necropotence here? Yeah, I think we're better getting down Necropotence actually, because we can decide what we want to do next turn, maybe get into more lands and ramp. So I'll put 5 into the enchantment, and yep, that's enough to have our opponent scoop it up. Gonna try our hand against Dakon this time with a means of grabbing an Urborg probably. Maybe an Ancient Tomb, so yeah, we'll keep that. Not a particularly good hand, but we know what happens when we keep good hands on Magic Online. Expedition Map into play on turn 1, probably crack that on turn 2. Yeah, maybe for an Ancient Tomb, ready for a turn 3 Sheoldred. We draw into some more spot removal in Baleful Mastery. That is a Spire Owl for us. Look at the top 4 cards, put them back in any order. So cracking that for the Ancient Tomb straight into hand, we'll still get a card draw during our draw phase. And gets us into another swamp, so in for our commander. The 1/1 flies straight over our commander. And we gain 2 life, going back up to 39 during our draw phase. That's a Wound Reflection, which will come in handy. Maybe get that down next turn. Get down the swamp here into the Veto. And then whenever we gain life, our opponent will lose that much life. And let's start really chipping away at our opponent here. Doubt he's going to get down a 5-power creature at instant speed. Is able to do something here though. That is exile a target non-white attacking creature and gain life equal to its toughness. Yeah, couldn't think of a much better answer to Sheoldred. Does have a high toughness. So we're getting down the Sheoldred again next turn apparently. Only 4 cards in our opponent's hand at the beginning of this turn though. Shocking down the Watery Grave. And is maybe able to counter the Sheoldred if he's holding up this mana. There's a Solemn Simulacrum, so we can go for Sheoldred now, get this counter magic out of his hand. And we can go land Solemn the turn after, and that will help us to get down our commander yet again. But that is allowed into play. Not gonna bother Yeah, we'll hold back the veto just in case they've got a Ganjo or something like that, showing us that they've got combat tricks. Instead, looks like they were just holding up something else. That is Nephalia Sea Kite, so could have just jump blocked us anyway. Seems as though this is Esper Birds. 2 cards in hand and about to play another spell here. It's a Mist Raven this time. Return a creature to its owner's hand, so bouncing the Sheoldred back's fine. And then continuing to peck us in the air. Alright, there is a Crick, Son of Yawgmoth, so we can get down that for 4 mana. We'll have 3 mana left over. So it's probably worth doing that so that we can start swinging in with a lifelinking Crick next turn. Do have to start being careful with our life total, but we're giving our opponent a half-decent chance as well. So our commander costs 4 life and 2 generic mana, puts a plus counter on the Crick. And we can afford the Baleful Mastery or the Defile here. Duskrider Falcon now, protection from black, followed by Keeper of the Nine Gales. So return a permanent to its owner's hand, that's probably worth killing with the Defile. Turning everything in sideways, so yeah, the Crick's not going to have us gain too much life because it won't be able to deal damage to this, unfortunately, so yeah, we're going to have to find another means of gaining life, maybe putting it into the veto and going wide on our opponent. Let's go Defile onto this before the end of the turn. We do still gain life to the card draw. There is a Malicious Affliction, deal 2 damage to our opponent with veto as well. So let's turn in sideways with everything and we can give everything lifelink with veto in response. Yep, just blocking with the Crick as he should. Could put life into the activation on the veto as well, but like I said, we need to start watching our life total. So it's lifelink on everything, we'll gain 5 back here, which means that veto will see that and deal 5 to our opponent. So we are at 19, knocking him down to 25. And we can pay 4 life into Malicious Affliction. If a creature dies, then we'll be able to copy that and destroy another thing. I don't see how another creature is going to die here though. Just turning everything in sideways, trying to outrace us. So let's just try and save ourselves a bit of life here and we'll go after the 3 toughness creature, should be fine. And this way we only take 3 life. Alright, we gain 2 life to the draw phase, so knock our opponent down to 21. And why don't we try and get down this Wound Reflection. I'm doing it before combat so that I know exactly how much mana's left over. I'm being lazy and not working it out. So that adds 3. Take 2 more life to the Wound Reflection. And then we'll go with some Ancient Tomb life as well. Putting more counters on the Crick, which is pretty useless. And then we can still swing in and gain some lifelink damage here. That protection from black doing some work for our opponent. Throwing it in the way of the Crick again, as you would expect. So we'll have to go down to 10. And then I'm not holding up the Baleful Mastery, but that's a risk worth taking, I think. Just for the sake of not putting as much life into the Legendary. So 4 mana only for the veto. And we go back up to 15. Our opponent goes down to 11, so doing a nice job of draining him. And then the Wound Reflection is going to deal some more damage, so currently at 11. And then going down to -1, so yeah, that worked out pretty well for us, the Wound Reflection. Doing some decent work in the end there. Not sure what my opponent could have got into, but he might have been able to disrupt what we're doing here, and not sure we would have been able to gain enough life to keep up then. We'll try another one. Playing against Timur and Elegeth this time. I forget Elegeth has partner. Okay, 2-lander, so maybe see what we draw into, go for a turn 2 Lightning Greaves and maybe have to Demonic Tutor for fast mana and get the Greaves on there straight away. We're on the draw anyway, so we can wait to make a decision on that. Alright, turn 1 Sol Ring really changes things, so drop the Swamp. We are going to need double black, so might have to tutor for a Jeweled Lotus next turn. Getting down the Watery Grave tapped means that the Sol Ring isn't likely to be countered. Mox Diamond. Discarding an island into a command tower. Alright, and into Arcane Signet means that double blue is held up. Does our opponent have mana drain? I mean, they always have mana drain, don't they? So, do we just try it here? The problem is we're going to add a lot of command attacks to our commander if we're not careful. Yeah, I'm going to chicken out and go Horn of Greed into the Makokoro. Our opponent is holding up priority. And that gets us into Solemn Simulacrum to help fix our colours. Now passing straight over to us, so it is looking like it's control pass. Draw into another tutor. So we'll try Solemn Simulacrum. And that is allowed down. So Solemn Simulacrum, swing in and deal 2 damage to our opponent and pass. Noteworthy that the Horn of Greed does help our opponent as well, but he is missing lands here. Turn 4, see if he gets into his 3rd land. He does, so draws with that. Tymna into play will obviously gain our opponent more life, but draw more cards as well, so start holding back the Solemn. And if he wants to draw more cards, then he'll have to do it into the Sheoldred. Alright, so we don't have to go for, after getting into a land, we don't now have to go for the Jeweled Lotus, which means I don't feel as bad about having our commander countered. So yeah, we'll go like that. See if they've got that mana drain. No counter spell, they did have the counter though. Maybe they've just drawn into that in the past few turns, but we'll assume they had it. So I'm not going to drop the Howling Mine here. I'll hold up the Vamp Tutor for my opponent. And I might go for a Reanimate with that because we can afford to get down our commander again next turn. I might just drop this into a Reanimate if it gets countered again. Managing to make another land into the Horn of Greed. It's the risk you run with this card. We really want to be having our commander in play with that. Sword of Feast and Famine is pro-black. We'll have the Tymna survive. We'll draw another card when we block with the Solemn here because I don't want to be discarding really. Alright, and into a Memory Jar, so yeah, really need to be landing the commander if we can. Can't draw additional cards with the Tymna because he didn't hit us. So let's go for that Vamp Tutor and grab ourselves the Reanimate. Argument to be made for going for an answer for the Tymna, but we'll have a surplus of cards to discard, I suppose. They're getting multiple untaps is the problem. So attempt Sheoldred again, and Lightning Greaves on there. And that does land, so throw down the Swamp, no need for the Reanimate. We will draw to the Horn of Greed, which will gain us a couple of life, take us back up to 40, and we've got our Draw Pain stuff in hand now, so yeah, maybe this next turn, and then we'll have 3 untapped Swamps at least, which means 6 mana, so might as well swing in here. We're not going to be able to block with pro-black anyway. With the discard, we could set up a Reanimate, I suppose. We're risking not losing the Sheoldred. Our opponent could have an Edict effect. Or bounce counter, something like that. Another land being played into Horn of Greed will lose our opponent 2 life again. And then they're obviously going to have to put life into the Tymna to draw as well, although they'll have gained 4 by then. Alright, a tutor for our opponent in the form of Imperial Seal. He will draw into it with the Tymna, so could go after that Edict effect. Hits us for 4 with Tymna, so let's get rid of... yeah, just getting rid of Ob Nixilis should be fine. I have a feeling that we're going to have to use Reanimate on the Sheoldred at some point. So our opponent going down to 31, then 29 off the Sheoldred, thanks to the card draw from the commander. Drawn into what he got with the Imperial Seal now. Okay, it's a Mind Twist that he went for apparently. So completely decimating our hand. Might have to make use of this Makokoro then. We can each draw a card with that. Draw into a Cabal Ritual, so let's go for each player drawing a card with Makokoro. We'll gain 2, our opponent will lose 2. Alright, and that is a Crick. And we've got 9 cards in the graveyard, so this will gain us 5 mana, which means we can just tap out into the Crick without taking any life. More commander damage that we're worried about here, I think, but the additional life might be of some relevance. So the discard not as worrisome from the Sword of Feast and Famine anymore. Swing in with the Crick as well, just to gain some life. We'll deal 6 to our opponent. Again, no point holding back blockers against pro-black. Had to face off against pro-black in 2 games here. Well, we've got our opponent south of 20. An O-ring for our opponent. I was going to say we'll get rid of the Crick, but it seems as though it's Sheoldred our opponent's going after. Then playing another land into the Horn of Greed to lose 2 more life. So probably doesn't have removal for the Sheoldred in hand then, or he would have likely played the removal. Okay, should have waited to play the land then. Imprisoned in the Moon, our opponent's got the perfect answers against mono black here. Another tutor, and we'll be able to once again draw into the card that he tutors for, as well as untapping all of his lands here with the sword. And now tapping out into his next commander, that is Elageth. And we see another Swamp, so let's go for the card draw with Makokoro again. No disadvantage for our opponent now whatsoever. And that is a Mithril Coat, so might as well just drop the land in order to draw again. Alright, and an Infernal Sovereign is excellent, so can play this for 4 and hold up the Mithril Coat. And I miscalculated, we don't have enough mana for the Mithril Coat at all, unfortunately, so we're going to have to pray that we don't have more removal put on us, because that thing could be a ticket out of here. Obviously we had to play against the fact that we're going to be discarding to Tymna though. An Ancient Tomb. Don't think our opponent's missed a land yet. Okay, Fateful Absence, so it's probably just Esper removal tribal. They do have a means of removing the Crick. Decided to leave this thing in play. Playing an Augur Owl to scry 3. And there we go, more removal in a Banishing Light. Our opponent's still at 5 cards in hand, so probably has us here. Although we do have a clue token to crack at the end of the turn. A Sol Ring down to 4 cards in hand, into a Talisman, 3 cards in hand. And I'll crack the clue token now, just in case we don't want to discard the Mithril Coat. Okay, Bubbling Muck, I imagine is more useful than the coat at this point. So we'll take our various commander damage, get rid of the coat, and then it's Liliana of the Veil is going to make us discard anyway, most likely. And our opponent gets rid of an island, 2 cards left in the hand. Alright, so that's an Infernal Grasp, can go on to the Sphinx most likely. Go with Makokoro again, into a Petrified Field, will draw us to the Horn of Greed, and just into an Urborg. So Infernal Grasp will do it on our opponent's turn, because if he's going to counter, we'd rather he swallowed up mana on his own turn. So we'll see if he's got another Scry effect to play into his Sphinx. Playing a Strip Mine now. Strip Mine goes after the Petrified Field, so just tap it for mana in response. Then it's Jace Mirror Mage. Looks like our opponent has kicked it as well. No, apparently not, just the one copy of that. So our opponent going for the discard now. We'll just discard the Urborg, we're going to get rid of that to the sword anyway. And then plussing on the Jace, we'll go for the Infernal Grasp in response to that, so that he doesn't get the card draw. And then it's 5 damage. Likely gets down his commander again. We'll have 3 cards in hand. So there we see Elageth come into play again. The Lord of the Rings set brought about some cool scry shenanigans in Simic, so I wonder if it'd be good to partner this up with a green commander and do some kind of Simic tribal that way. I think that would be interesting. Like I say, I always forget that Elageth has partner. A Dark Deal is probably useless. I'll land again. Draw with Horn of Greed again. Yeah, and in all fairness, even if our opponent didn't have all the answers for us, we haven't exactly drawn very well, so we'll make our opponent go down a card here, managing to get a counter out of our opponent's hand. We are going to pay the 4 into that because we've just got a basic, and he does go down a card, so I'll go down to 2 here, not that I imagine he cares. So, yeah, getting rid of a Time Twister, obviously doesn't want to feed us that. There's a Mind Sculptor he decided to give up on as well. Coalition Relic, Orzhov's Signet, and a Talisman, plenty of mana, ticking up on the Lily. So that can now be minus down if our opponent wants to, but I don't imagine he needs to at this point. We'll be at 20 points of commander damage, so he just gets us next turn by swinging in with the Tymna. Now our opponent thinking long and hard about what he should do next, deciding to pass. Alright, a Damnable Pact. Shall we just try and land this on ourselves for the fun of it? Let's put 7 into this. Anything of any relevance is probably going to cost us life anyway, so it doesn't matter that we're losing most of our mana. And of course, our opponent's got a Fierce Guardianship ready for it, so yeah, I have a feeling our opponent's going to drag his feet during the next turn, so we'll just leave it there. Don't fancy leaving the video like that. We haven't really seen too much from Sheoldred. The first game was a bit of an easy one against a more casual player, and here we had Sheoldred dealt with quite nicely, so we'll try another one. Up against the Dragon this time with a 2-lander into a Signet. No means of refilling our hand, so Dark Deal isn't as good. I suppose we can, yeah, we'll have a few draws in the meantime, so we'll try that and we can go Dark Deal on turn 3 with a Sheoldred in play. Maybe hold off on that. We'll see. No turn 1 plays. We draw into that Horn of Greed again, which I think I'm okay to discard. The Dragon should consistently make lands as well, so Arcane Signet, we will have 6 cards in hand, down to 5 when we cast this next turn, so yeah, hopefully get into a land. We can play Sheoldred and aim for that Dark Deal, I imagine. It's a shame because our opponent's likely to discard a dragon into that, and that would make the Reanimate useful. No land for us. We do draw into a Mind Stone, so play the Mind Stone and still aim for the Sheoldred next turn. Would have been nice to get it down here. Noteworthy, our opponent played a Dragon Tempest, which is really good in the Dragon Tribal decks. And it's a Herald's Horn, trying to make the dragons cost less, maybe get some card advantage. Okay, and a Lightning Greaves this time. So is our opponent going to have spot removal for the Sheoldred? There's an argument to be made for us holding off on this until we get the Greaves in, but we're already a turn behind on getting this down, so we'll play the Sheoldred, the Apocalypse. And that means that we'll be on 7 cards next turn, so the Dark Deal not as bad as it could be. No card advantage from the Herald's Horn this time. And that is a 3-mana Goldspan Dragon, so a nice means of some ramp for our opponent. Yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing the back of that as soon as possible. If we get into spot removal, I might point it at this before we go for the Dark Deal, even though it puts us down a card. So 2 mana on a treasure, as long as the Mythic stays in play. And there we see a Vamp Tutor. I think it might be worth Vamp Tutoring for something before the Dark Deal, and we can keep our hand full. Is it just going to be Necropotence? We got punished for not tutoring for Necropotence last game, so let's make sure we do it here. So that goes on top, and then we'll play ourselves a Dark Deal. Only 5 cards in hand, so we'll draw 4, one of which we know is a Necropotence. This assumes we get through with this. I'm assuming our opponent isn't going to counter. Alright, there we are. So getting rid of Dragon Speaker's Shaman, the Great Henge, Dragon's Horde, Rhystic Study, and Anguished Unmaking. Pretty stacked hand from our opponent. We drew into a bunch in order to gain life, and our opponent drew to lose life thanks to the Sheoldred. And it's a land for us, we're at 43. So obviously got into a land there, can't hold up the Baleful Mastery unfortunately. We'll be able to throw that on the Goldspan Dragon next turn, not before he has the Goldspan pay for itself in the form of treasure tokens though. Although these will only tap for 1 by the time this thing goes down. Managing to make a land, our opponent did go down a card to the wheel. So has 8 mana available here, 9 of it's a dragon with the Herald's Horn. Cracking the treasure token now, and that is into an Ancient Silver Dragon, which is going to be, yeah, it does gain haste, so if they draw enough cards off this at 18 life, they're going to die to that Sheoldred, so yeah, they're going to have to be careful here. Need 3 more dragons in order to be able to deal with Sheoldred with that Dragon Tempest. But decided to swing in, whole bunch of damage here. The 2 mana they get might be able to point spot removal at Sheoldred before they draw. See them roll a d20, they've got 3 cards in hand. Wow, and see them jump up to 14, so that's 11 cards they drew there, which means 22 damage from the Sheoldred. Yeah, not sure what the plan was there in all honesty. So going down to his own Ancient Silver Dragon and the Sheoldred would have been a great play if it wasn't for the fact that he was up against one of the only commanders that would like to see him do that. We'll try another one. Up against the Dragon again, I'm not sure if that's the same player. Ancient Tomb, we can do pretty much the same play again with Dark Deal, except get down a quicker Sheoldred this time, so let's keep. And we're going to need double black in order to get down our Sheoldred on turn 3, so get down the 2 black sources and the Ancient Tomb. And there's another one, so yeah, no need for the Horn of Greed really, I don't think. We'll just do the same thing as we did with the Dark Deal. Sol Ring for our opponent, got down a couple of Tricycle lands. And not done there, gets down a Scion of Draco for just 1 mana. So I think we're fine to get down our commander here and pray that there's no spot removal. Drawing into the 5th card with Sheoldred, dealing 2 damage. Doing to Howling Mine previously by the way, which there's an argument to be made for actually getting that down before the Dark Deal, or maybe that and the Dark Deal. We'll have 7 cards in hand again next turn. Alright, not managing to play a land there, so we could actually help our opponent. There's a Damnable Pact as well. Oh, that's a shame, our opponent just scooping it up. Not even waiting to see what we've got here. I mean, yeah, just drawing into another land next turn. Yeah, we had some decent stuff on the way. I mean, this is always the argument for playing it out, because Dark Deal might have got him into a board wipe or some spot removal or something. So we'll try yet again. Right, we'll try again, this time up against Zuladoc. Jet Medallion, Lightning Greaves on, yeah, a bit awkward what we get down in what order, but shouldn't have to worry about spot removals, so I'm not sure Lightning Greaves is going to be all that relevant. Expedition Map in order to tutor for a land likely next turn. Toxic Deluge if we're desperate, but not really looking to get that down. If we're going to take a lot of damage from the Titans anyway, we might as well take it to the Toxic Deluge and get rid of some permanents. Although it is noteworthy, this has 4 toughness, so we can have Sheoldred in play and get rid of this with the Toxic Deluge and keep our commander, so that's good. A Sensei's Divining Top being played, and then it is Guildless Commons, bouncing the basic I should say. Alright, another land, so definitely go for all our black spells costing 1 less. Like some more black mana as opposed to the colourless ones in order to make the Bubbling Muck more relevant. Be nice to get down that Lich's Mastery. Now cracking the Expedition map, playing the Wastes before he plays the card that he tutored for. And the land he goes after is an Ancient Tomb, we've seen plenty of in this video. Spinning the Sensei's top. Alright, a Defile. If we'd got a black source we could have gone Bubbling Mucking to our commander, but no such luck, so might as well get down the Lightning Greaves here. Defile's only going to be -2/-2 onto something at the moment. Might be going just slow enough for our opponent. Got 5 mana available to him here if he drops the tomb. Instead deciding to throw out a Wastes, spinning the top during the main phase, and then passing over to us. Alright, now seeing a Swamp, don't mind throwing that down, so Sheoldred being equipped with the Lightning Greaves. And there are flash creatures in colourless that are relevant, but none of them will worry a Sheoldred in the red zone, so we'll just go in. And it's -3/-3 on a creature now with the Defile. 1 more Swamp and we'll be able to take out the Zuladoc with it. Now the Ancient Tomb comes down and I imagine we're going to be seeing that Zuladoc. So if we don't see another Swamp for the Defile, then I think it can be Toxic Deluge. If we -3/-3 on this, then it will be 4 power, meaning it can't take on the Sheoldred, so we'll see if they want to trade, I think. Just drawing into a Thought Vessel, which is probably worth getting down. Bubbling Muck is 2, 4 and 6 mana, so we can go for the Lich's Mastery. We'll see if we can get rid of the Zuladoc first though, and then we'll decide, based on what happens here, our opponent may well want to trade us. Only 3 cards in our opponent's hands, so you would assume he is quite eager to ramp into some Titans. Deciding whether or not to take the trade here. Deciding against it. So that means that we'll ramp this turn. And we'll play ourselves a Toxic Deluge. 4 life put into that. That will have our Sheoldred survive, because for some reason this is a 4 mana 4/5. And we're eagerly awaiting more swamps so that we can deal with the Zuladoc again and the Defile. I'm just hoping that they can't get into some big scary Titan of some kind here. Sensei's top, spinning on the main phase again. Not tending to do that during the upkeep. You can decide on your draws with that. They have got down a Wastes on turn 6. So they've got 7 mana available at least next turn. Alright, another colourless land in the form of Makokoro. So throw that down. I think we're fine to go for the Lich's Mastery here. It does mean that we're getting away from the Defile, but I don't think -3/-3 is going to be all that relevant. And I'm going to shy away from swinging in just in case we want to hold back a Death Toucher. I don't think they'll get anything relevant down with haste. They'd have to throw in a Lightning Greaves and then a creature. And Lich's Mastery, whenever we lose life, for each 1 life lost, we'd have to exile a permanent, and obviously don't want to be doing that. We want to at least gain some life to the Sheoldred so that we can draw. Rogue's Passage will get some big scary creatures straight through. So back into the commander, I imagine. No, Deceiver form. Yeah, Defile won't deal with that. And then stacking the top card of the library for the Deceiver form could have it become a copy. Oh, its creatures other than Deceiver form become copies of it, so we don't need to worry about that. We'll see a revealed card though, because they do have to reveal it. So just showing us a Mind Stone. But if that's the best card he had in his top 3, then I don't think we have too much to worry about. So gaining 2 life. Alright, excellent. So we draw 2 life, gain 2 life, and that means that Lich's Mastery sees the 2 cards that we draw, and this goes on forever. So we'll see what we can get into here. Alright, and our opponent decided to scoop it up against us there. So obviously we draw our entire deck here, but we can't lose the game. I've been kicked out into the lobby here, so I can't even try and come up with a means of how we would have won that one. I can't remember how much life we had available to us. Alright, so back in the deck list here, I imagine it would have been, if we had 8 mana available to us, which I have to imagine we did because we would have had like fast mana and stuff, it would have been, where is it? Yeah, Crick, we would have had a hell of a lot of life, don't forget. And then just getting down a combo like Underworld Dreams into Peer into the Abyss pointed at our opponent. And then that means that we can have them draw half of their deck and this would deal damage to them equal to the number of cards that they draw. So let's say they draw 40 cards or something like that. Again, I'm not sure how many cards they had left in their deck, but that would have definitely been enough damage. So yeah, Lich's Mastery. I think we've seen on the channel before Lich's Mastery with Sheoldred the Apocalypse, but it's always a fun thing to show off. If the "you can't lose the game" clause wasn't on there, then it's not something that we'd go for, because obviously we'd deck ourselves there, but it is there, so we can draw our entire deck and get off to combos like that. Hopefully you all enjoyed this brief revisit to Sheoldred the Apocalypse, and I will see you all in the next one, I hope. I'm tribalkai. Thank you for watching.